And we are going to move into the third segment, also known as segment number 3 or segment the third in Old English, with a Montana judge that Cindy is going to tell us about. Cindy, what is going on in Montana?
So this is an article from an MSN, and it talks about a legal battle in Montana between a judge, District Court Judge Michael Moses, and the conservative state legislature. So far, uh, the judge made a ruling, and the state legislature said, "No, we're going to ignore that and do things our way." Um,
Mm.
they are trying to prevent trans people from changing their gender on their birth certificate. Uh, so it's been going on for a while with appeals, with denial, and etc. etc. And this is another battlefield in the war I talked about earlier, the war on LGBTQ people. Um, Trans people have been targeted on all sides, whether it's medical, legal, sports, everything. And having the birth certificate changed is vital for trans people, because if you want to be able to live as your preferred gender, you need those IDs changed. Um, Maybe I'll talk a little bit about how it happened to me. But in the meantime, it seems that Montana's elected legislature wants trans people to stay in pain for their entire life. And it's another story after the first segment. It's basically the same, rinse and repeat, and it's getting unnerving. So, guys, what do you think?
This seems to be
Unnerving is one way to put it.
yeah, for sure.
Go
Shit,
ahead, Josh.
like fucking terrible bigotry, yeah, all that kind of crap. This seems to be like the governor Greg Jafforti. I don't need to say his name, right? He doesn't matter. I don't respect him because of this crap. Is created the rule to block these certificates through that reversing a rule from I think it was 2021 to make it more difficult. And then we got Judge Michael Moses is actually standing up against this kind of bigotry. And I think that's what we need to take from this a little bit, because yes, this sounds fucking terrible what's going on there, that we see so many people in government taking advantage of their power and using it. And there seems to be a side that seems to be saying going after trans people is the only stance that they have to go on right now. Yeah, I'm seeing it all over the place. It almost seems to be that they want to be triggering people instead of making any actual policies, because if they trigger people, which is a word that they use sarcastically, but could actually have meaning for people that are actually triggered, they get onto the news and they get talked about and they get to get their face out there for everybody. It's not about policies anymore. But this Judge Michael Moses is going up against that, and this is kind of what we need to be aspiring for, because right now we're seeing it all over the country, where bigots are taking control of things, and we got to be doing what Michael Moses is and finding ways that we can help the people that are getting oppressed the most in this country. So I applaud that there are people doing something about this. I want to see more people doing this kind of stuff, because if unjust laws, and they were vague, stupid laws, they were like they need to have some kind of surgery done in order to get the birth certificate, when we already know that not every single trans person gets a surgery. Not everybody desires a surgery. So that's a completely useless reason to not give them it. Or they'll say like a clerical error, which anybody can make up a clerical error if they want, but it doesn't matter. Clerical errors have nothing to do with people, and what people are is what they tell you they are. So it's a ridiculous thing. I'm happy to see somebody's fighting against it. I'm hoping other people follow his example and do something like in the states that are pushing bullshit.
Agreed.
Cynthia.
I even want to point out specifically about this ruling that Judge Michael Moses made, is that he made it twice. He was first
Right.
First, he made it twice because in 2017 they wanted to introduce a rule to make it harder for transgender people to be able to change their markers on their birth certificates. However, he ruled against it because he said that I believe that he was saying that the rules that they had in place were they were very nebulous. They weren't very clear, especially when you were talking about you have to have a surgical procedure. It never said what surgical procedure. I mean, because and as you pointed out, Josh, that not every trans person actually gets surgery, or not every trans person gets a sexual reassignment surgery. Put it that way, right? You may have some if it's a trans woman, they may go ahead and get like feminization surgery for their face, maybe a breast augmentation, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they go all the way. Or and even if they happen to do anything in the in lieu of the sexual organs, that has levels too, right? And so the rule that they actually came up with to say that you had to have a surgical procedure was so nebulous, so murky, it made no sense. And even they couldn't even spell out what exactly does that mean. So Moses was like, no, we're not doing that. And then when they tried to push it, right, the Montana lawmakers in 2021, the ACLU had to come back and say, hey, could you please tell them again what you told them in 2017 that they could not do, that they're trying to do again? And he was like, sure.
Right.
Again, we're going to put a block on this particular rule because it is murky, it is nebulous, it is not clear. And until you actually have like a clearer rule of exactly how this is supposed to go, we're going to have to block it. And then, but the crazy thing about it is that the lawmakers ended up saying no. And the crazy thing,
That's not good
the
lawyer talk.
crazy thing about all of that, yeah, that's exactly what they said. They said no. Uh, but that is lawyer talk. That is very legal. I looked it up. I googled it, obviously. So, but the crazy thing about it is that I love how in American politics, specifically on the right, we get to cherry pick what we will and will not do. What do I mean by that? So we already know that there are exorbitant amounts of federal judges that have been stacked since like Trump's been in office that lean
Right.
conservatively, right? And so
Yep.
there was a complaint specifically about Judge Moses that they should not listen to him because he was appointed by a Democrat. So that's one issue, right? I know, right? And then like the lawmakers, even though like in the judiciary branch, that is the supposedly the branch that interprets the law and what they say goes. And then the lawmakers is like, no, we're just going to completely just like gloss over you. I mean, even when you try to have the president say when Roe v. Wade came down that we want to vote on a bill to codify Roe v. Wade, they still had to get the buy-in of the majority of the lawmakers, not only just in the House of Representatives, but also in the Senate, in order for that to pass. It didn't, so they still have to go by the rule of law that the Supreme Court came in. It works like that in lower courts too. So these Montana lawmakers, along with their Department of Health, is so out of pocket. They and I know that corporal punishment should not be a thing, but I kind of sometimes wish it could be. I personally wish that
They need a
that
spanking.
you need a spanking or take that gavel and just go smack up
Yeah.
right across their face. Just say like, you will do what I say to do because I'm the judge. Here come the judge. Here come the judge. Looking face. All
And
right.
you know why they're bringing this. Yeah, you know why they're bringing this back up. This is like what we were talking about in an earlier segment, is that they're trying to bring these candidate cases up for the Supreme Court because they
Mm-hmm.
know that fucking raper face, Handmaid's Tale, whitest black guy ever, and neocon sleeper agent, they're going to gleefully rubber stamp anything that gets the DeLorean up to 88 miles an hour. Like, they've issued the call, and now these conservative legislatures are trying to rehash this already settled law in an effect in a vain attempt to seize power before they become completely irrelevant.
Mhm.
That's what I think we're trying to get at here. But Cindy, you have some pretty personal experience with trying to deal with this kind of shit in your own country. Why don't you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I'll try to stay brief. I'm French and I live in Belgium, so my story is a little bit more complicated than it should have been. But so basically, you have two steps. One is the gender, and the other one is the first name. Two different steps you can take in parallel if you want. And so for the gender, I had to send a letter to the court of the city I was born in France, which is very practical, because now I'm in Belgium. So then they send me another letter to tell me, okay, you can come on that day. You will have an audition, and we'll decide if you can or not. Unfortunately, I never received that letter. So
Wait, are these like physical letters, like snail mail? Like, wow.
yes,
That
yeah,
you never
they
got.
don't.
That
Yeah,
you never got. Right?
that I
Is
never
that what
got.
you said?
Yeah,
Right.
Wow.
which
Okay.
which is even worse. I only received the letter saying, "Hey, you didn't show up, so we're closing your case." So
So
I
that
sent
letter shows up.
yes.
Jesus.
So I sent another letter and said, "Please don't. I didn't receive your letter." Blah blah blah. And so I finally show up and I explain why I want to change my gender and in front of judges, which is very it's very weird because you have all those people in front of you and people in the back waiting for their turn to speak. It's the whole process took 2 years just for the gender change on my ID card. Then there's the first name, which was a little bit faster. It took, let's say, 8 to 10 months. But in Belgium, the entire process takes 3 months. Like you go to the city hall, you say, okay, I don't feel comfortable with my gender. You sign a um, pre-written paper. They make some kind of checkings, like you're not trying to change your identity to avoid justice, or those kind of things. And 3 months
Right.
later, you sign the same paper. Yes, I do, and then you change your ID.
Mm.
That's all. And so that's how it should be everywhere.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
There
Yeah.
is no logical reason to go to a judge to say, uh, okay, I need to change my gender, or I need to change my first name, or to change my last name, because it's the same process in France. If you want to change your last name, you have to go to a judge, and then it's printed in the official journal, which is a documentation that comes every week and says what laws has been passed in the last week. So if you change your name in France, it's printed officially on a record that everyone can see, and that's just ridiculous.
Mm.
Wow. This whole thing, it is sort of reassuring and also sort of worrying, but the thing that gives me hope is that there is still, this sort of one man that can change history kind of narrative here. And this whole narrative with this story made me think of Mr. Frank Murphy. I'm sorry, Josh, I'm stealing him from you. But Frank Murphy was he was one man. He was a judge. He's a World War I veteran. He was the mayor of Detroit during the Depression. He was the governor of Michigan, the attorney general, later appointed Supreme Court justice. He argued against interring Japanese Americans during World War II. Very unpopular position. Fought for justice for a black doctor who was, by the way, named Dr. Sweet, who repelled a KKK mob against supreme pushback, right? This is a little known piece of American history, but if you're not familiar with it, folks, I encourage you, go look up the story of Frank Murphy. This guy was a fucking badass, and he was not afraid to speak truth to power. This guy, this Judge Moses, is that guy, right? One person can stand up and affect change in history. But my question to you guys before we wrap up this segment is: do you think this is still possible in today's America? Like, can one champion make a difference? I'm skeptical. Josh, what do you think?
I mean, on that, I'd say there's
Cindy's
always
saying no.
possibilities. You're always going to have people that can like galvanize people behind them. But you need that one. You do need a figure. I'm hoping this is one figure that starts to galvanize people behind him, gets voices heard. I'm not a optimist,
Yes.
but I want this to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Cynthia, did you have any final thoughts before we go?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, to answer your question, that I don't believe one person can, but I do believe a critical mass can. And it doesn't have to be everybody, but one person can be the catalyst, because that could be a domino effect in order for more people to actually get on board and say, no, this is wrong. We should be doing better in this space, and let us all get together to make a change. I'm not going to sing that song, but if
Right.
we definitely galvanize ourselves behind the, the theory of creating a critical mass behind a and behind an issue, I do believe it can change for the better.